disclaimer is that this is just for educational purposes. It doesn't constitute medical advice. So do please contact your specific medical provider because it is so important, particularly if you're taking insulin or you have other meds, and that anything that you do, even adding in a walk after dinner, if you have diabetes, particularly if it's pretty progressive, we don't use the term brittle diabetics usually anymore, but sometimes people will still use that terminology. But if you have pretty advanced diabetes, or if you're very sensitive, even adding in a walk after dinner or a walk after a meal can significantly lower your blood sugar, which is a good thing for you to know if you're trying to do that. But if you don't let your provider know and you start even just adding in a simple 30-minute walk, that can significantly lower your blood sugar. And if you're on things like insulin or you're on medications that are already going to be lowering that, they may need to make adjustments to that. So we don't want you bottoming out your blood sugar without your care provider, being able to monitor that and make adjustments to your meds. So even good, simple things, we want to make sure we run by them because diabetes is a very serious condition. So focus on what you can control, take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Make baby steps, so small progress is still progress. And then do please reach out if you have any general questions that I can help with or want clarification or things like that. So we're going to talk first about the impact of diabetes. In the United States alone, 1 in 3 Americans are diabetic or they're considered pre-diabetic. And most of those people don't actually know that they have diabetes. And so we spend $242 plus billion a year in medical management of diabetes. And so there's some stats and things here for you. You're going to have a copy of the slides. So I'm not going to read through all of this. But I think it's really important to understand how pervasive and how prevalent diabetes is. I also want to mention that it's one of the top 10 leading causes of death or morbidity and chronic illness. And so with that being said, some of the challenges that we have in Alabama that are related to diabetes, we really have seen an increase in our diabetes diagnosis. And, that could be, again, because we're more prone to kind of do screenings and we're looking for it more now. So it could be that. But it also is that we are seeing, declining health in our population, not only adults, but also children, because our obesity rates have been on the rise. And obesity, I would not say causes a diabetes diagnosis. I am more of the opinion that diabetes and obesity kind of go hand in hand because I tend to see obesity and weight gain being a way of the body compensating. And so if you know me, or if you attended other classes, you know that I'm really big on wellness and reducing toxins and things like that. And when you gain weight, sometimes that is because it's a protective mechanism because fat actually stores toxins. So when you have extra fluid in your body, when you have extra fat, like adipose tissue in your body, sometimes it's because it's hormones, sometimes it's because we're overeating, which is kind of the popular narrative, but sometimes it's actually because it's a protective mechanisms that sometimes fats store and protect against toxins and they encapsulate the toxins that your body can't get rid of. So if you're constantly kind of filling your bucket or your barrel or your body up with toxins and different things like that, if your body can't take care of those and expel those and excrete those, then it will sometimes get stored in fat. And so you gain weight to keep that on. And so that's why sometimes people get very, very sick when they start to lose weight, because if they're not sweating, if they're not detoxing their body, if they're not moving their body and they're just trying to lose weight through kind of nutrition alone, you can sometimes get that toxic overload. And so diabetes and obesity go hand in hand, but I'm not so sure that obesity really is the cause. I think it's just an accompanying kind of symptom compensation that the body kind of naturally does. So those are our challenges. And of course, in the deep south, we tend to have more rates of diabetes at an increased risk of having metabolic and cardiovascular syndrome. There is a lot to do with lifestyle. There's a good bit, I think, to do with genetics. But then also part of it is our culture, because we in the South particularly tend to, use food in a very celebratory and cultural way. A lot of times people will talk about food as if it's just a fuel source, it's just about calories. And I'm of the mindset that food is fun. Food is more than just fuel for me. I love food. I would consider myself a foodie. I love it, and it is fun. It is cultural. It's traditions. It's things like that. And so, I'm not of the mindset that you have to count every calorie. I think it's more important to count your chemicals. How much is processed in your food, but also you have to give yourself some grace. We're not robots, we're not machines. And so we always hear calories in, calories out. Count those, move your body, and you'll lose weight. And if it were that simple, we would all be our ideal body weights. And we're not. And I'm not my ideal body weight based on the BMI. And there's a lot of metrics besides the BMI that we can look at. And so I want to offer you these kind of anecdotal stories and comments and these statistics to support the fact that we have a big kind of challenge around diabetes and metabolic issues and cardiovascular issues, again, that really go hand in hand with each other. But it doesn't mean that we can't do something about it. We can still have fun. We can still have good foods. We can just make healthier choices. We can choose healthier recipes. And we can know that, unfortunately, and something that we need to role model for our kids, because we're seeing more and more young kids in elementary school ages who are dealing with and kind of facing this obesity and diabetes, developing type 2 diabetes, not type 1, which is typically called juvenile diabetes, but we're seeing even a later onset of type 1 in early adulthood, even in like the early 20s and sometimes even the mid to late 20s, because we recognize that type 1 diabetes has more of an autoimmune component. It's not just that you were born with it. So lots of new information that we're learning about this kind of disease process as we go. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of what we're talking about when we say diabetes is kind of a complex thing to discuss in a 1 hour talk. But diabetes is defined as an increased sugar circulating in the blood, and we sometimes will say hyperglycemia. So anyone can have hyperglycemia. It's just like having high blood pressure. All of us at some point have high blood pressure, but we don't all have hypertension, the diagnosis, the medical diagnosis. It's the same thing with hyperglycemia. If we go out and get a Coke today, we're probably going to have a blood sugar spike. And if we didn't have a blood sugar spike, I would be a little bit more concerned that we didn't, because your body probably should respond to having a lot of liquid sugar, right? If we go and get like a Coke or a coffee or something with a lot of sugar in it, our body probably should be responding to that to kind of take care of it. And so it's just the body doing what the body does. So hyperglycemia, we all have had that probably at some point even today. But having sustained hyperglycemia that the body can't manage is then known as diabetes. And so blood glucose levels are usually drawn through either sticking you in your finger, so a finger stick, or a venipuncture, which is where they draw your blood, usually kind of in that bend of your elbow. And they can do something called the glycolated hemoglobin, or the HbA1c, which is going to be a combination of all of your blood sugar measurements over the last 90 to 128 day, or 120 days, excuse me, for the lab that you are using. So it just depends on the lab and how far back they go. But this is the gold standard for diagnosing diabetes. So if they suspect that you've had a lot of different readings and it's really high, then they'll do the HbA1c. They'll measure that, and then there's parameters based on your age and your gender, and the labs, how that's been done to see if you qualify for a diagnosis of diabetes type 2, which is sometimes called diabetes mellitus type 2. So risk factors for type 2 diabetes are things like obesity. And again, that's more because you're concerned about insulin and weight loss resistance. Being over the age of 45, having a strong family history, especially immediate family, so parents, grandparents, siblings, a history of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, gestational diabetes puts you at a dramatically increased risk of developing type 2 later. Physically inactive, so being pretty sedentary in your lifestyle, a history of heart disease or stroke, a history of depression, and even a history of polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. So, normal blood sugar levels for someone who's fasting without diabetes is going to be 70 to 99. And again, you'll see a slight variation in that range. And then the official ADA recommendation for someone with diabetes is that you would want to see them be between 80 and 130. And then 2 hours after a meal, a person without diabetes would be less than 140 because you're going to expect after you've eaten a meal to have a spike in your blood sugar. And then the ADA or the American Diabetic Association, they're going to say less than 180. And your individual doctor or provider may have a different number, but these are just the ADA's recommendations. And then the HbA1c for someone without diabetes would be less than 5.7. And then for the ADA, they would say someone with diabetes, they want to see a less than 7. Now, I will say, and I have permission to share this, my husband has type 2 diabetes that developed, and he was within a normal weight range, a normal BMI, but he had to do long dose treatment, 3 years on steroids, which can raise and alter your blood sugar. And so after coming off of that medication for 3 years, he then almost immediately developed type 2 diabetes. And his weight gain actually followed his diagnosis. So he was a normal BMI, a healthy weight for his size and for his age. And then he actually started gaining weight after. And so I really believe in trying to break a lot of the stereotypes around being obese or being overweight, and having extra fat, especially on your core, which is a little bit more linked to having chronic health issues. There's a lot of stigma around type 2 diabetes, I think, sometimes because people treat it as if it's something that the person has done, that they've chosen poor nutrition habits, or they're overweight, or they're not taking care of themselves. And I just believe that that's not true. That's certainly not true for every person who has diabetes. And I think we should be as sympathetic and understanding of people with diabetes as we are people with any other health condition. Certainly, lifestyle factors play a role, but it's not the whole picture. So I really believe in kind of dispelling those myths and helping people to see that diabetes is something that we should treat just like any other medical condition without that stigma. So, prediabetes, again, about 87 million Americans are diagnosed each year. And this is going to be having elevated blood glucose levels that aren't quite high enough to meet the criteria for the type 2 diagnosis, but it's sustained blood sugars that are higher than the normal. And then long term damage can begin even in prediabetes. So, that's why we like to have people screened. To know your blood sugar levels, to know whether it's a fasted blood sugar or a non fasted blood sugar, and to understand that you may have what we call reactive hypo or hyperglycemia. And so it may be that there are certain foods that cause you to have spikes in your blood sugar more than others. And, eating that food or drinking that drink or whatever that trigger is for you, even something as simple as, just not managing stress well or not getting enough sleep can impact your blood sugars. And so it may not just solely be food. If you can manage those things, you may avoid a diagnosis of diabetes altogether. So, those healthy lifestyle habits can actually reverse the signs and symptoms in early stages. And I'm a testament to that because I had 3 pregnancies. I had 2 sets of twins after a singleton birth, and all of that within 4.5 years. I gained a lot of weight with those back to back pregnancies, especially with the twin pregnancies and my second and third pregnancies. Excuse me, y'all. I've been sick for 2 weeks. I'm losing my voice. But I was pre-diabetic because I had PCOS and because I had gained weight and had some hormonal issues, a lot of lifestyle factors, being a young mom and working full time and being in graduate school. I wasn't having the healthiest habits. And I was able to reverse my pre-diabetes, pre-metabolic syndrome diagnosis. So I actually went from being in the type 2 morbidly obese category with a 33 plus BMI, to having a healthy BMI. I'm within like 10 pounds of being in my ideal body weight, which I never thought I'd be able to say. And I was not one of those Instagram influencers that lost it all in 6 months or a year. It took 3.5 years. And it took 3.5 years for me to reverse that and get off my high blood pressure medication, which I had to start in my mid 30s, mid to early 30s. And so I'm telling you all that because we often think if we have prediabetes or if we're on a blood pressure medication, which I was on for 3.5 years, that we can't come off of that we can't make those changes. And I've always struggled with my weight. So I'm telling you this to say that there is hope. There are changes that you can make. And sometimes you can do everything quote unquote right, and you still don't see the results that you want. There's sometimes just things that are out of your control. But what we want to do is really inspire you and encourage you to control what you can and to not give up. Because sometimes when we get a diagnosis, we think, well, if I've got this diagnosis, I might as well just do what I want to do, right? Because I can't do anything about this. So I might as well enjoy that extra cookie, or I might as well enjoy whatever thing, or there's no point in me starting an exercise program because it's not really going to help. But there is hope and it can help. So I hope that encourages you. So, two main types again, we talked about type 1 and type 2. Of course, we've got gestational diabetes as well, which often does not get talked about, but is super important for us to understand. It usually does not get screened for until you're in your third trimester, but you certainly can have issues with fluctuating blood sugars even in the first and second trimester, particularly people who have a lot of nausea, or who have hyperemesis gravidarium, where they're having excessive vomiting every day or nausea every day. And so blood sugar can be an issue throughout pregnancy. For type 1, I mentioned that it's known as juvenile diabetes, but we're going away from that terminology because we're seeing it being more of an autoimmune response versus something that you're just automatically born with and you can't develop later in life. And then type 2 is usually, we say it's non-insulin dependent, but more and more people who are type 2 diabetic are actually going to end up on insulin. So I can't tell you the exact years, but my husband was well managed with one medication for his diabetes, and then it took two, and then it took three, and then it took more. And so by the time you're adding 3 or 4 medications, then that's usually when they're going to start talking to you about getting on insulin injections so that they can lower your meds, or they're going to talk to you about an insulin pump. And usually they're going to start with insulin injections first, and then you may move to a pump later. And so we got to the point where we were actually having to talk with his doctor because his blood sugars became so poorly managed, even though he hadn't changed anything in terms of diet or lifestyle. He was still maintaining his good habits, where we had to actually go to injections for insulin, and then they kept doubling. And so we actually did the Verta program that the university offers, and he was able to lose 40 pounds that he was able to get off and had been really difficult for him to try to lose on his own with previous good habits, using a clean ketogenic diet that was monitored by a health coach and a physician virtually. And it was free through the university's insurance. And he was able to more than half his insulin. So he went from having 6 insulin injections a day to being less than half of that. And he was on close to 200 units of insulin, and he was able to get back down to the 30 to 40 range where he had started, and he's maintained that for 2 years. So he's really a success story with that. And it was something that was really, really shocking to his doctor, and really even to me, because things had been so difficult to manage, but yet he did see results, and that dramatically improved his life, because you're thinking about having an insulin pen with you twice a day versus having to have up to 6 pens with you a day. That really does change your lifestyle. So again, hopefully more encouragement for you. It's never too late to try. And he has had a diagnosis of diabetes for 16 years. So, 14 years into that, he was able to even make changes. So again, advanced diabetes, or what we used to say is brittle, is going to probably end up with some kind of insulin for you, and you're going to want to be well managed with that. And I always recommend an endocrinologist working with your regular, general practitioner or nurse practitioner, because an endocrinologist can really help you avoid some of those complications. So type 1 and type 2, again, we're talking about the difference in how the insulin's used and transported, and y'all probably don't actually need to know this, but sometimes it's helpful to understand how this happens. So really in type 2, the cell walls become resistant to that insulin. And so the insulin that does get produced, sometimes it's not enough, but sometimes it's that you lose the sensitivity to it. And so what is available there is not able to be transported, and it's not being able to be used. And so the blood sugar levels actually do rise. So a gestational diabetes, mentioning this, a lot of complications can arise, and it can be a very scary thing to be expecting a baby. And so, this is just another, kind of medical condition that, may add to some of the stress, and we certainly don't want to do that. Doesn't mean that it is, your fate that you're going to have, gestational diabetes, or you're going to have complications, or that you're going to develop type 2 later on, but it's just something to be knowledgeable about. They do, like I said, screen for this in the third trimester, and they usually give a very sugary drink that's very highly processed, and that has a lot of chemicals and things in it. I actually, because there were no alternatives back when I was pregnant with mine, my babies are 11, so it's been a little bit. A lot has changed in the last 11 years. But there are other alternatives now. You can do continuous glucose monitoring instead of taking that drink. You can take a healthier alternative of that than like the glucola that they give you, which looks kind of like orange, like Fanta or something like that. We probably, if you've had a pregnancy, you probably remember the taste of that drink and having to sit for your 3-hour wait and all of the things accompanying that. But I think the continuous glucose monitoring, or even monitoring with a monitor, can be really helpful, like I said, throughout the pregnancy, because the baby is developing in that first 12 weeks. And so you want to make sure that you have good nutrition, good blood sugars early on, not just at the end. So I hope to see that that's something that we change in how we treat pregnant mamas in the future. But individuals who have type 2 diabetes, or have gestational diabetes during a pregnancy, need extra monitoring, and those babies may have health issues. Usually, we're most concerned that they may be a little bit heavier. Usually, they're greater than 9 pounds, and usually babies are around 7 or so pounds. Typically, if they're at their 37-week gestation. So that can be a little bit of a harder delivery, puts you at an increased risk for having C-sections, and they can have blood sugar issues, so they can need extra monitoring. There's other things that we won't get into, but this just is something to be aware of. And you may not be having a baby anytime soon. That your years, like mine, may be over for having children. But you may have, friends or neighbors or coworkers or other people in your life that you can help support, because it is a stressful time when you're having that extra monitoring. And I went through it personally, so I understand it can be a little nerve-wracking. We also have something called metabolic syndrome, which I mentioned, and it's a cluster of conditions that go together. So when you saw the list of things like, um, cardiovascular disease, stroke, heart attacks, all of that, that is putting you at increased risk, because all of this is about inflammation and about having enough oxygen perfusions, meaning the blood is getting oxygen and is going where it needs to go. And, all of that can contribute to having heart disease, stroke. And if you have those risk, high cholesterol, hypertension, all of those, again, the extra blood sugar, all of that's contributing to extra weight, extra inflammation, extra obstacles in terms of the blood getting where it needs to go. You can have increased triglyceride levels. And so all of those things together, all of those either risk factors or diseases that you may have, contribute to what is known as metabolic syndrome. And it's often associated with people who have PCOS. So I had metabolic syndrome in this pre-diabetic diagnosis, that really kind of originated with my PCOS. It also can cause you to have fatty liver disease, where the cells in the liver start to die and get replaced with um, fat deposits. And then you can also see people who have sleep apnea. And it's not really truly understood how all of this goes together. And I have had everything on this slide. Again, I saw an increase in fatty liver issues, which usually you only think about that with excessive alcoholism, which was not even, a factor for me. And it's really uncommon to see that in women and people who are younger, so kind of in the first half of your life. So I'm kind of a testament to this, that I was able to actually, when I reversed my high cholesterol, reversed my hypertension, reversed my prediabetes diagnosis, when I had my new next liver scan, I had also reversed my fatty liver disease, which is pretty unheard of. So, again, these other factors, overweight, obesity, age, ethnicity, heredity, diabetes, those all go hand in hand. I also have sleep apnea. Mine's obstructive because I had a facial injury as a child. So y'all are getting my whole life story. But the reason I'm sharing this is because when you go to look for success stories online of people who've reversed all of this stuff, usually they're trying to sell you a product or a program. And there's no magic program or protocol or pill. It's really making simple life choices. And there's not a ton of people who have reversed all of those things that have shared their story. And a lot of times people will say, especially in the medical profession, it just can't be done. But I'm a testament that it can. It does take a lot of work and effort, but it's definitely worth it being on the other side of that journey. So, again, things like having low HDL. If cholesterol is something that's of interest or a concern for you, we have a class about heart health, which would be really helpful because I talk about all of those things and how they relate in terms of triglycerides and hypertension and cholesterol and how those work together. So, that's one that you could go and listen to on the archived talks. And it's one of my favorites to teach because it talks a lot about the myths of cardiovascular disease. You have visceral obesity, which means that you have a lot of extra adipose, or what we call fat tissue, around your organs. And so there's extra layers of fat around those, which is making the organ have to work harder. And that's why when you carry your weight in the trunk of your body, so kind of, neck to pelvis area, which is where I carry my extra weight, that is more concerning than if you carry your weight in like your extremities, like your face and your arms and your legs, because that's not compressing or kind of restricting any organs. And then, of course, you have that insulin resistance and hypertension as well. So, again, it's a lifelong commitment to a healthy lifestyle because you either need to be preventing this, metabolic syndrome, or you want to try to do as much as you can to really recover and heal from the challenges that you have. And usually, what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of inflammation and weight gain. You're probably going to see hypertension and cholesterol develop about the same time. And then that's when you can develop some of those other diseases and things. So, 30 minutes of exercise a day is kind of the minimum. We like to say 30 minutes 5 times a week. And really, it would be better if you could do 30 to 45 minutes of activity, 5 to 6 days a week, and then have an active rest day on Sunday where you're, up and moving around and doing things. That's going to be really helpful. Eating vegetables, especially a lot of different colors of vegetables and fruits, that's going to get all of those good antioxidants and vitamins and minerals. We say eat the rainbow because if you're only eating one or two colors of fruits and vegetables, you're not getting all of the minerals, vitamins, nutrients, antioxidants that you need. We have a program that I have used in the past called To Be Mindset by what we used to be called Beachbody, and it's developed as a mindful eating practice by Alana Molstein, who's a registered dietitian in California, and she always says to eat vegetables most. So she'll say water first. So if you feel hungry, drink water first and then vegetables most is kind of her tagline. So kind of a vegetable-based diet, a vegetables first diet anyway. Lean protein is always really good. They recommend now for most people who don't have a chronic condition, and this is something, if you have diabetes, you can end up having a lot of issues with your kidneys because your kidneys are trying to filter that extra blood sugar. So this is one to ask your doctor about, but lean protein, usually 30 grams of protein per meal is what people are, recommending today to help have a sustained blood sugar. But again, you have to be very cautious about extra protein with diabetes and kidney disease or kidney issues. Um, and then whole grains. So whole grains get villainized sometimes, but I'm a believer that most people still need some healthy carbs. Most people do better with that. Some don't, but a lot of people still need those healthy complex carbs. And so having a complex carb, a healthy fat, and a good amount of protein that you can tolerate well, those three things together will help keep your blood sugar from spiking. Limiting saturated fat is really important. So that's what contributes to your high triglycerides. Triglycerides are just those stored extra fatty deposits that aren't used. And then salt in your diet. You want to limit the table salt, but I'm a big proponent of having your Celtic sea salt or your Himalayan pink salt. in moderation as you can tolerate it, because that's going to help, especially if you put it into water and drink it, it's going to help get your hydration status up. And a lot of times, people who have diabetes or have some of these other issues, they're chronically dehydrated. And the more dehydrated you are, the thicker that blood is going to get, because it's got all of that sugar and it's got all of that extra stuff that you can't really dilute because you don't have extra water on board. So, hydration is really, really key. Maintaining a healthy weight, it's easier said than done, but obviously really important. And then not using tobacco products or other substances. And I'm just going to say substances because there's so much out there today. But anything extra like smoking, nicotine, vaping, all of that is going to contribute because it causes inflammation in the body mostly. And I think that's important to know. Inflammation is kind of really the root cause of most of the things that we're seeing and talking about today. So anything you can do to reduce inflammation is going to be really helpful. With diabetes, early symptoms are going to be things like increased thirst and hunger and frequent urination. You might even have a lot of frequent UTIs, and that's especially telling for men because men usually have UTIs much less frequently than women. So if you start to have low testosterone, frequent UTIs, lower anemia, especially in male patients, those are kind of signs that you maybe have something related to diabetes or metabolic syndrome. Dry mouth, unexplained weight loss or weight gain, fatigue, blurred vision, headaches, those are all early symptoms, but so easy to attribute to other things, so they sometimes get missed. Other complications that you can see, I've listed here. Y'all are probably familiar with these, but we just want to counteract these as much as we can with those good lifestyle choices and changes. And so, cardiovascularly, we have to look at that extra glucose that's circulating around in the blood is really damaging the lining of those blood vessels. And that's what can actually lead up to the buildup in the arteries with the cholesterol, the extra sugar that's been on board. And that's what then further contributes to heart attack, stroke, peripheral artery disease, high blood pressure that results then in hypertension, kidney disease, of course, high cholesterol, and then you can develop the complications from diabetic, you know, progression. So retinopathy, issues with your eyes, cataracts, glaucoma, neuropathy, and things like that. And the neurological system, again, it's the same. So we're damaging those nerve tissues because we've got that extra inflammation on board. We say that it's unknown, but I think that the cause is most likely diabetic neuropathy is probably related to that increased sustained inflammation. Our body has a couple of different mechanisms for sending out different kind of workers in our body to help with inflammation, because inflammation is supposed to help in healing and repair, but it's supposed to be acute. So it's supposed to be a short-term thing, a short-term fix. And when that's a long-term issue, that's when inflammation stays really high in the body. And that's not how the system is designed. It needs to shut off. And when we're constantly damaging the system by having those sustained high blood sugars, etc., it never shuts off. So the body never truly repairs. And that's when you have the excess fat, the excess water on board, because those are going to be ways to dilute the toxins, the extra sugar, but then your body just never gets a break. So it's like your body is always on, even when you're resting, even when you're sleeping. So when you are resting and sleeping and you feel like you never feel good, you never have energy, something like that is going on in the body. It's sleep apnea, it's inflammation, it's something that's not allowing your body to get rest. It could even be something related to mental or emotional health, which is very much connected to all of this. So you just kind of have to be aware of that and kind of do a little bit of a search to see, okay, what's probably the root cause of this for me? And it'll be different for everybody. So you can have pain and burning and tingling and numbness in the feet and the legs, but you can also have it in the hands too. So you just want to make sure that you don't have an accident or injury because you don't feel things. So making sure that you're checking your feet good. If you do have advanced symptoms with neuropathy, making sure you're wearing white socks so you can tell if there's any skin or blood or tissue or things. Making sure that you protect yourself from getting burns or things like that, because you just can't feel that sensation. And then communicating that to people, so that they can also help you with it. So your immune system is going to be on high alert when your blood sugar is so high, because it's just not something that, is supposed to happen all the time, right? We're supposed to have a little spike, and it's supposed to level out. But we can have big spikes and then big dips and that can be pretty sustained throughout the day. I also want to mention that you can have anxiety from that because when your blood sugar is doing these spikes all day long, you can have anxiety because that's your body's way of getting your attention and saying, hey, something is wrong. We need you to pay attention to that. And sometimes that anxiety gets kind of categorized as a mental health issue, which it is because this is affecting your mental health, of course. But the reason for it, like the base root cause of it, may not be that it's a mental health issue. When you have that kind of anxiety, you can't think your way out of that anxiety. You may not even be able to tell someone why you're anxious. You just wake up or you just go throughout your day and you just feel anxious in your body. That kind of makes you feel anxious in your head, and you may not even know why. That's probably a physiological reason. And so anything like foot infections, yeast infections, candida overgrowth, UTIs, surgical site infections, or just delayed wound healing if you get a wound, can all be issues that you either help you decide that maybe you do have something going on with diabetes, or it may be something that you notice and need to pay attention to. Obviously, like once you actually know you have diabetes, you need to plan for that extra care and make sure your blood sugars are well managed. So the sweet truth is that you can improve. I didn't want to get to this part without having told you all that at the beginning because a lot of the things I shared can be really, um, challenging. It can be hard, and if you're living with diabetes, it may already feel that way to you. So we wanted to start out with the good stuff because you can still have some carbs. You can still enjoy your food in your life, and you can still make changes even if you've been given kind of this gloom and doom diagnosis. Sometimes that's what it feels like. So we're going to explore how you can make changes. Again, it's everything you know to do. Nothing I'm going to tell you today is probably going to be overly life changing. It may not even be new information, but sometimes we just need a reminder. So, prevention and treatment and recovery really start with lifestyle changes because you can't do a whole lot about your genetics. You can impact how your genetics respond to your environment, but you can't change your DNA right now. That's not an option for most people. And so, you want to just nourish your body, you want to take care of it. There's an old adage in health and life coaching that says the more work a person has to do. So basically, the more unhealthy they are, the unhealthier that person is, the less change they can tolerate, right? So if your gap is this big, because you've got a lot you need to work on, you have to take even smaller steps than the person who doesn't have as big of a gap because you just can't add any more, on. You're just already overwhelmed. So nourish your body, start there. Usually giving yourself rest, looking to see how well you do with sleep. Sometimes extra sleep is not what actually is helpful. If you have a sleep disorder, sometimes sleeping more actually makes you feel worse. That's true for me. So actually sleeping more like 7 hours, sometimes 6 hours, that's not great. Don't do that. But 6 to 7 hours for me, I actually might feel better than sleeping 8 or 9 or 10 hours just because my body is having to work really hard when I'm asleep, harder than other people. So don't feel like that's weird if you feel like, sleeping longer actually makes you feel worse. When you get to 10 plus hours of sleep, if you're doing that on a regular basis, most people, even without a health issue, are going to feel worse because our bodies are just not made to sleep that much. Occasionally on a holiday break, sure, but regularly every week, we're just not designed for that. Be more active. So take the stairs when you can. Listen, when I first started doing my health journey, I could not make it up. I'm on the third floor of my building. I could not make it up 3 flights of stairs in this building because 3 flights actually feels like 6 flights. So I would take 1 flight of stairs and then I would ride the elevator up from floor 2 to floor 3 until I could get from floor 1 to floor 3. I started actually going down the stairs because for most people, going down the stairs is less cardiovascularly taxing than going up. So I started going down the stairs and then I started saying, okay, if I can go down the stairs when I leave work, I'm going to start going up 1 flight of stairs when I go to work. So being more active does not look like joining a gym or signing up for a 5K. Sometimes it's just taking the stairs. Sometimes it's just parking your car a little bit further away. It's setting an alarm and getting up and walking every hour. It's getting a standing desk. For me, I have a standing desk in the back corner. I don't use it nearly enough, but it's there. So it's a reminder for me to go stand at my desk and do something instead of sitting all day. They say that sitting is the new smoking because it's really causing a lot of health issues for us long term in terms of longevity and maintaining a long, healthy life. Getting plenty of sleep and rest, but realizing that, you may need more rest or more sleep on different days, less on other days. So take your medications as directed, but again, always consult with whoever is managing your medications before you make even simple changes. Even something like drinking more water. If you drink no water and you start drinking enough water, even that can change your blood sugar, which is amazing, but your provider needs to know. Avoiding, again, those tobacco products, those extra substances, avoiding smoking, because again, that's going to cause inflammation. That inflammation and blood sugar go hand in hand. Keeping your medical appointments, making your medical appointments. A lot of times we're really good about scheduling them for other people, but we're not great about doing it for ourselves. Make that appointment, keep it. You can't change what you don't know. So that's why we always say know your numbers, because you can't change your numbers if you don't know your numbers. For years and years and years, my weight kept creeping up after I had babies because I didn't step on a scale forever. We didn't even own a scale. When it broke, I threw it out because I had such a negative relationship with it. Now, for the most part, I weigh every day because I just see it as data. I just look at it as it's telling me something, and I don't always like what it's telling me the week after Thanksgiving. But stepping on that scale keeps me from letting my weight creep up. That's healthy for me. You may not be in a place where you can do that. 5 years ago, I could not have stepped on a scale um, at my home at all. It would have just been once a year at a doctor's appointment. I would not have looked and I would have told them, don't tell me what my weight is. That's what I did 5 years ago when I was morbidly obese type 2. But today I can do that and I can look at it and it might cause some feelings, but it helps me know I need to get back on track or I'm dealing with some inflammation, which is totally normal. Most people fluctuate in their weight about 5 to 10 pounds at any one time, and it's normal for you to gain weight more during the colder months. It's just protective. We have not evolved to where we don't do that. So it's not just that it's holiday weight. Even if we celebrated 0 holidays in the winter, we would still probably put on some extra pounds just because our body is like, hey, there needs some extra weight to keep them warm. So that's pretty normal. Keep all of those appointments, monitor your blood sugar, monitor your blood pressure, definitely monitor your cholesterol because a lot of times we say that the blood pressure is the silent killer, but I actually think it's high cholesterol because high blood pressure actually does have symptoms. We say that it doesn't, but it does. You have scratchy eyes, it feels like you've got galls in them. You'll get a headache, you feel really fatigued. That's high blood pressure. High cholesterol actually has zero um, symptoms and they go hand in hand because most of the time high blood pressure is high because you have high cholesterol because those deposits are blocking and restricting blood flow. You can have high blood pressure for other reasons, but that's the most common. And then managing your stress, so much easier said than done. But really acknowledging that you have stress. You're always going to have stress. There's a TED Talk called How to Make Stress Your Friend, and I really recommend it. We also have some archived talks on how to manage your stress, how to overcome overwhelm, how to build resilience. Those are also good talks that you could go and listen to. Healthy lifestyle changes, get outside in nature is one of the best things that you can do to kind of habit stack. We also have a habit stacking, habit change talk that I love to teach. Y'all can go watch it as well. But habit stacking would be something like, I have 30 minutes. What can I do with my life? You can fill your water bottle. You can call a friend or coworker and say, hey, meet me outside. We have a beautiful campus with a lot of trees. Put on some warm jackets. Go outside. So you're going to be in nature in the sun and then go walk for 20 to 30 minutes. So you're going to get some good vitamin D. Your body needs that for almost every cellular function you can imagine. And so you're getting connection, you're getting outside, which usually helps reduce cortisol levels. You're moving your body, which is going to increase your activity. You're hydrating while you go. And if you go by yourself, instead of connection, you could be getting some mindfulness. Of course, all of that's going to impact your mental health. And so that is how you habit stack. When you're like, I have no idea what to do, Make it fun, make it free, make it easy so that you'll do it. Um, pet therapy, music therapy, listen to your favorite music. Do some stretching. If you haven't done stretching, there's some great desk stretches that you can do. Miranda on this call introduced me to the Fit On app, and that's FITON. It's free. They also have a paid subscription, but they give you so much great information for free. It is one of the best apps. I'm jealous that I didn't know about it first. But Miranda shared it with me. It's been so good. They give you recipes. They talk about stress and coping. They talk about mental health. They give you different exercise programs you can do. It can be something that you do with no weights, no resistance, something low impact, which is what I had to do when I had surgery this year. I started my workouts back with physical therapy and this free app, just so I could just do basic chair exercises. Um, you know, Eating healthy meals, eating the rainbow, drinking your water, getting good rest. This is representative of those basics. The wellness basics is what we say. So we focus on sleep, nutrition, moving your body, mindfulness, um, and uh, nutrition and hydration. So those are the 5 wellness basics that we say to really focus on. And that's where we tell people to start because that's really what's going to make a big difference, but it's going to be doable bite-sized baby steps. These are some other tips that you can do. So focusing on your health and wellness, not just your diagnosis or, your disease process. It's not just about managing your blood sugar. It's really about looking at the whole picture, managing that stress and realizing that your health affects your stress affects your health, exercising, not just dieting, but making it a lifestyle, making food, healthy choices an actual daily thing that you do. You have to decide every day that you're going to choose this lifestyle. Avoiding the extra trans fats and added sugars, no processed foods, kind of shop the perimeter of the grocery store, using your blood sugar monitor regularly. Switching to a continuous glucose monitor is life changing. I actually did that. I paid for it out of pocket and monitored mine for a month to see where I was having sensitivities, and that made a world of difference for me because I was having a little bit of a reaction, a hyperaction to a couple of different foods, and I was able to eliminate those or eat them with something else to reduce that. And you don't really see those changes when you're just sticking your finger. Taking care of your mental health, again, we have a lot of resources through EAP that you can take advantage of. You get 5 free appointments when you get a referral, and you can always renew that and just pay your copay. Absolutely recommend mental health care for everyone. Customize your fitness plans and your wellness plans to your actual goals and lifestyle, and then have some community. So have that extra support and accountability by having a friend or someone usually who doesn't live with you, not a spouse or a partner, but someone outside of your daily life that you can kind of check in with, that can hold you a little bit accountable is helpful. These are the wellness basics that I mentioned. We call them the 5 to thrive, and we have a recorded talk on this online as well. And then nutrition, things like having a lean protein, a full fiber carb, or what we call a complex carb, and a healthy fat at every meal, really helps with having a healthy meal and a lifestyle. So choosing those healthy fats, having those fruits and vegetables, trying to make them not starchy, so the non-starchy ones. And then maybe looking at your portion sizes. So not just counting calories, but actually looking at how much food you're eating. So eating on a small plate can be really helpful. Eating like on a salad plate and then getting more if you're still hungry. Boxing up meals at restaurants or sharing with someone's a great cost savings and helps with portion control. Our portions in the US in restaurants usually are about a third to a half as much as like double what you would get in a European restaurant. Just because of the way that we treat our food, we sometimes don't get the full satiation because we have so much processed food. But if we're eating something really rich, it's like you can only have 1 or 2 squares of a really pure dark chocolate because it's just so rich. But you could eat a whole bag of Reese cups because it's just been altered so much. So that's kind of the thought of that is, eating those smaller portions of really high quality food. And I know that can be costly, but make choices about your food when you can. And buying in bulk, freezing, saving, making, 2 meals out of one, those kind of things will save money and time. And I know that's a challenge um, on anybody's budget right now. Healthy plates, really, it has to be a balanced meal. Like I mentioned, having that colorful plate. This is my Eat the Rainbow graphic. And then tracking your meals and snacks. I used to have to eat a snack between every meal because my blood sugar would dip so much. I don't have to do that now. With intermittent fasting, I'm able to really regulate my blood sugar better. But I did it by tracking my food. I really like to just take a picture of what I eat in a day when I'm being really mindful of what I'm doing, because that is so much better than just saying I had a burger, because all burgers are not the same. Did you have a gourmet burger at a restaurant or did you have a fast food burger? Two totally different types of burgers. And so tracking that can be really helpful for a visual person. And then just make one healthy change at a time. Some things with protein, these are some examples of how you can get more protein in a day. 2 or 3 eggs are always helpful if you like eggs and tolerate them okay. Some people have a lot of food allergies with them and sensitivity, so I don't feel amazing eating eggs, but some people feel like they're superhuman. So just kind of track your symptoms and the things that you um, notice about the patterns and what you eat and how you feel and how you sleep and all of that. Hummus is a favorite of mine. Complex carbs, these are some examples of grains and starches. So try to avoid the white foods, the brown, the beige foods. Those are going to be the ones that are a little bit higher in starch. And then some other non-starchy vegetables, which you want to be about half of your plate. That's all of the good greens, plus some of the other great colorful ones to get your good vitamins in. Then some healthy fat examples. I'm blowing through these pretty fast just because I want you to come back and reference this when you're making your shopping list this week. And then diet and exercise. Again, I mentioned this early on, but these are some goals that you could have for how to walk. Again, if you're not walking at all, 5 minutes is enough. Taking the stairs is enough. Parking a little further away is enough until you can build up to that 30 minutes a day, 5 to 6 days a week. And then again, increasing until it's 45 minutes. Hour workouts are usually not needed for most people, and you can over exercise. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of medication therapies that you can do. Obviously, don't make changes to this without talking with your provider. And then stress management, positive coping is really important. So finding things that you can control feels really, really helpful and empowering, because anxiety and stress come in when you feel overwhelmed and you feel like life is happening to you instead of life happening for you. And so control little things. If the day gets off course, my day did yesterday, just telling a friend, my day got off course. I got nothing on my to-do list done. And I'm stressed about that. Just saying that felt really good. And then I was able to kind of move on with my day and pick up with a different plan, right? So listening to music on my way home yesterday was my coping mechanism of choice. Today I needed to get some focused work done this morning, and so I put on brown noise on Spotify and played that so that I could kind of drown out the office noises and concentrate. I'm planning on going to, see the zoo lights um, at the zoo in Birmingham with my kids. Like, that's something that's on my calendar to look forward to in the month of September. I'm going to do some meditation today or tomorrow. I'm going to unplug and disconnect this weekend, plan some holiday things. Those are the kinds of things that aren't typical stress management tools, but it's very simple that you can kind of build into your day. Monitor those blood sugars. Again, when you're first diagnosed, you want to do it at least in the morning, at night, and with every meal or when you feel symptomatic. And then this talks about frequency again. Obviously, your doctor or provider is going to give you more specific examples, but it's never a bad idea to test. Master Your Diabetes. This is a great book about how to take a more integrative approach to both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Again, read with caution, take what resonates. Share this information with your provider. This is our social media. We would love for you to follow us. The Wellness Work Life crew do an amazing job. Carolyn, Sierra, and Miranda managing all of this for us. And I'm going to move over the chat. I know we're going to be close to our time, but let me see if I can get the chat back up. And I know that exited out, but that's okay. We just want to be able to see your chat. Thanks for putting so much in the chat, Miranda. I appreciate you. Okay. For ketones, I'm going to tell you to go and research that on your own because depending on your age, your gender, because it's based on hormones, and whether you're diabetic or not diabetic, that's going to affect your ketone levels in the range that you want. A lot of times, the point 1 to point 2, when you're looking at your levels, you're going to have different goals. And so I would say working with a nutritionist would be really, really helpful. We have nutritionists here at the University Medical Center that can actually do appointments with you and create personalized nutrition goals based on your medical conditions and based on your goals with your nutrition and your ketones. So those ranges, the reason that the ketone ranges are so wide and so unfamiliar to us is because there's just a ton of factors. Also, it matters if you're doing blood ketones versus urine ketones. So that is one that's more complicated. Fruits that are better for people living with diabetes, Sharon asks, berries. So raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, those are going to be better for you. Um, hope that helps, Sharon. Hopefully you like those. And there's a lot of reasons why that is, but they have less sugar content. Just make sure you wash them really well because they're very porous, so they can have a lot of pesticides and things. Uh, I've always been told to eat a lot of protein. This is really good to eat so much protein all the time. Cindy, it is helpful for some people. It is not helpful for others. So, like I mentioned, diabetes, kidney disease, kidney issues, that can be hard to eat that much protein. Like I said, 30 grams every meal, which they're saying breakfast, lunch, and dinner, no snacks. So, yeah, protein can be really hard for people. Protein shakes can be helpful. But a lot of times, protein, if you're really measuring it and looking at your macros, it's 2 to 3 eggs. It's an extra helping of cottage cheese. So it's not eating a steak every meal like you see ketogenic people doing all the time. Let me know if that helps, Cindy. Latera says, my cousin was diagnosed at 19 years old and was skinny as a stick. When she found out her numbers were 300, she's doing well in management. I'm so glad to hear that, Latara. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that was our story with my husband too. So I really try to advocate for that because people will say, oh, it's just because they're eating poorly or, oh, it's just because they're overweight. And that's not true. Um, and there's been some recent examples of doctors who are very fit and very knowledgeable about health and wellness, who've developed diabetes in midlife, um, who had no other risk factors and who were a healthy weight. So, unfortunately, we just sometimes have those diagnoses. It also takes having the right doctor. Yes, Kimberly, definitely shop the provider that you're using if you're unhappy because they are really alongside you in the passenger seat. Hopefully, you're the driver of your health, but you definitely need a provider that you trust and have a good rapport with. Wait, Jimmy's. Carolyn says that she's had some issues. Yeah, so she found a medication that worked. I'm so glad. Yes, and every medication is going to have a different effect. I know some of you may need to leave, but I'm going to hang on here and answer your questions and read everything. Fruit punch, orange, and lemon lime. Lateris and triple. Okay, as a type 2 diabetic, this is very interesting. Thanks for sharing. Thank you, Stacy. Yes, the PowerPoint has been loaded, Lacey, and y'all will be able to come back to this talk. And I'm glad my voice has held out. I've been trying not to cough. This has been lingering for a couple of weeks now. So I'm gonna have to go do those good wellness things and support my immune system. Diabetic neuropathy related in any known treatments. Yes, it's related because that inflammation damages the tissues, damages the nerves. Known treatments, a lot of it is just symptomatic relief. So people will find helpful things with like massage therapy or physical therapy, doing light stretches. Nothing that has been announced as like curative for the neuropathy. But there are a lot of kind of like treatment options that give some relief. And so definitely ask your provider about what would be good for you. But I'm always a fan of chiropractic care, physical therapy, that sort of thing. Um, and then not getting too hot or too cold. Sometimes that will really be painful for people. Cindy had the same question. Hopefully that helps, Cindy. Danielle, Verta is, you have to qualify for it. So And I believe it's VIRTA, and we have that linked on our human resources page. So you can set up a consult, and sometimes if you're pre-diabetic or you have risk factors, sometimes they will take you or they'll put you in another program that's similar to that. So it's never, never a bad idea to ask if that is something you qualify for, but you don't have to necessarily